Chacruna audience. I've been offline for a while, but I'm back. I'm in Pittsburgh, a city that I have no reference to what it is, and I'm here for SOAP, the Sleeping Octopus Assembly on Psychedelics. I'm not quite clear to me why it's a sleeping octopus, but I really like the name anyway. And it's an event promoted by MAPS with local folks that wants to stimulate the local psychedelic community to get organized and fundraise and meet up. And I met here my great friend and colleague Jessica, that I have collaborated on a few projects for a few years. She left the groovy Bay Area, but she says that she's happy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I believe her, though I was suspicious. So it's great to see you again, Jessica.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for interviewing me.
So where are you living? Where did you go live?
I was recruited to the University of Minnesota in the Psychiatry Department and Institute for Health Informatics as a tenure track assistant professor. And, that was an alluring offer, as well as the cost of living. The Bay Area is great, but, I didn't want to endure the cost of living there for much longer, getting close to 40 now. So need to be able to buy a house someday and have kids.
Okay, I still have a problem with that thing called winter, but I hear you. Tenure track is not a small thing, so congratulations. And I'd like to share with the public a little bit about the Big Ayahuasca online survey that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So it's an anonymous online survey geared at people taking ayahuasca of their own volition in various settings that are aiming to treat post-traumatic stress disorder or other complications of trauma. But then we also welcome people without a history of PTSD that just want to contribute their experiences and information for control data. And the survey is still ongoing, and you can find it on the MAPS website.
How many people have answered the survey so far?
So far we've had about 1,300 people that have taken the survey. And about 600 people that have completed it. So we have a good amount of data, and it's growing every day.
Why 600 people only complete and 1,300 started? Is it because it's too long or too complicated and people get distracted or bored? What happens?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the first version of the survey was pretty long, so not everybody finished it. And part of the consent that I had written in, that I went through my ethics review when I got the study approved, was that they had to complete the study all the way to the end. And some people just talking about, their trauma symptoms will be a little too much for them to handle, so they might decide they don't want to do that or talk about it, and so then they don't complete it.
And what have you been, I know it's a big survey and it's like a few years, I believe. How long have you been involved in this project?
I started it in June of 2016.
Yeah, so it's just a few minutes, but that's the purpose of Chacruna, to bring some, short information, but with quality, to transmit a little bit what is scientific research to a larger public. So can you share with us some of your main findings?
So the main findings is that people with PTSD or past diagnosis of PTSD claim to be in remission after taking ayahuasca as a self-report. So decreases in symptoms of re-experiencing and negative thoughts and depression. Some decreases in substance use. A lot of people report getting off of their prescribed medications of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. There's a small percent, about 10 people with a history of PTSD, that claim that it was actually kind of re-traumatizing for them for various reasons of like the setting, not feeling supported by the environment, not having any follow-up care afterwards. And then there was, maybe like 5 people that actually thought that the experience itself was a traumatic experience and they didn't have PTSD and now kind of have PTSD.
So just to try to understand better, let me see if I got it. You say that the large majority, about 90%, reports good effects, but then there is a 10% that it didn't go so well.
Correct.
And regarding PTSD, how do you know if these people really had PTSD or is just self-report?
So there was a sort of a screening of a self-report. Did you ever get diagnosed in the past or currently have a diagnosis of PTSD from a clinician? But then I had another sort of validated questionnaire called the PTSD symptom checklist, which is used a lot in research just to sort of make sure that these people do in fact have PTSD or don't have PTSD. And so, for the most part, people that claim to have PTSD or be in remission, that corroborates their scores, but not everybody. Some people think that they're in remission and they still test positive, so...
So what are your conclusions from this research? Do you think that we can say that ayahuasca has great therapeutic potentials, but also some challenges? How would you translate the research findings into more, let's say, public health recommendations?
I would say that people with PTSD might have some hope in using ayahuasca to treat their PTSD. However, I think it's really important to know that they're in a setting that has the appropriate, medical support, psychological support for them. So making sure they're with a trained shaman, perhaps having a psychologist on staff that can help them when things get really difficult, and then having some integration process afterwards, because it brings up a lot of, these traumatic memories that I think they're going to need to work with somebody in the long term to kind of process that in a healthy way when they get home and return to their lives. But it is an option. It just needs to be taken a little bit cautiously. And I think, having all these facilities pop up claiming that they can treat PTSD but then don't actually have the support might be harmful. So I think it's important to have, the research available and being able to do this in a controlled way where we have the appropriate support for people so that there's not harm being done.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to think that a great majority, it echoes my experience that a lot of people feel great benefits, but in some cases maybe reliving those experiences and not having a proper setting might further damage them. I with my personal empirical experience in the last 2 decades drinking ayahuasca, I think I resonate with what you're saying. I just have a curiosity on whether you have comparisons on your mind, and I know it's not the focus of your research, but regarding MDMA and ayahuasca to treat PTSD, do you think that either of which has more or less potential benefits or challenges?
Yeah, so I think that people with maybe more severe PTSD would be better off taking MDMA because it's a little bit more gentle of an experience, and they feel more trust, and there is this upregulation of oxytocin, so they feel more bonded and having this trusting relationship with the therapist. I don't know that happens with ayahuasca, so there needs to be a lot more psychological support and rapport and trust with whoever's facilitating the experience beforehand, that they're not just going to automatically get like they would with MDMA potentially. So I think it just kind of depends on the person and what they feel comfortable with and the severity of their symptoms.
Well, thank you. And now I want to ask you a final question. I'm sorry that the mic is... Anyway, I don't know if you want to share or if you mind, but have you ever tried ayahuasca?
Yes, I tried it in 2010 after I finished graduate school. I went down to Peru and I tried it a couple times. And I thought it was great. I haven't done it since then. I would like to, but I just haven't had the opportunity due to work and just being busy and not being able to afford to go down to Peru.
And what did you learn from ayahuasca?
I had my own healing process from doing animal research in graduate school that I didn't realize had affected me so strongly, and that was one of the things that made me purge. But the thing I took away most was kind of observing other people's healing process, and that was kind of what inspired me to start working with ayahuasca.
And do you think if you took more ayahuasca, it would influence the course of your research?
Potentially, yeah.
In which ways?
I don't know. I don't know what would come up. Maybe just, more informed about some of the more traditional ways that it's being done rather than reading other people's reports, getting another perspective. I mean, I only went to one healing center, and it was kind of a weird center where you did it by yourself. Like he would give you the brew in a temple, and then you'd go down to your own tent and just kind of have your experience alone, which I know is not the traditional way that you do it. So I would like to try it and kind of get a firsthand experience of the ceremonial context in a group setting.
Okay, folks. Well, we're hearing here. We heard here some challenges of doing scientific research, of how to interpret data, what to do with data, and also the backstages of the challenges of the researcher. That she has a good tenure track position, and she has had a kind of not so great opportunity to drink ayahuasca. So that's a paradox of, if researchers trying to do research on ayahuasca, and maybe it's not so easy, the access, maybe they don't go to a nice site, maybe they want to go and they can't afford it. For many years they haven't been there. So this is ongoing, permanent, live investigation, exploration of the nature of scientific research and plant medicines right here from Pittsburgh in the SOAP meeting. Thanks, Jessica, and it's great to be here all with you, but the Bay Area is groovier. But anyway, you can always come back. Big hug to the audience, and keep on tuned. We'll keep on living from here. Bye-bye.